What's going on today, guys? All right, so today I want to talk about how this plant room came to be. I'm a little bit bummed because on my way yesterday to visit my cousin, I actually had an hour drive and I recorded a good video just giving you all everything. But the good news is that this video is probably going to be only a fourth of the length because this plant room came to be from a jade pothos. That was the first plant that I bought that I was able to keep alive longer than 6 months. Not the first plant I ever owned. First plant I was able to keep alive. I knew nothing really about plants. I just got lucky and placed that plant right there above the window on a trailing or a little hook or whatever it was. That's what I did. And the plant did amazing, guys. It really did. Until about after a year, I started running into a whole lot of yellowing. I didn't know at the time it was because the plant was drying out. Didn't know that. So before we get to the dried out story, the plant got to be pretty big, right? So what I did was I moved it from that light to on top of the refrigerator, which was very dark. I noticed that the plant was not doing well about 3-4 months into it. So I moved it back to the window. At that point in time, I did see the plant getting a little bit more healthier as I started seeing a little bit more green shoots. However, the plant still looked really bad. See, what happened was I wanted the plant to be wrapped all around the kitchen. So what I did, I put it on top of the refrigerator so that way I can get it wrapped around evenly, but it had absolutely no light. So the vines became with no leaves on it, so it just was long and da-da-da. I didn't want to cut the plant because to me, cutting the plant just showed that I didn't know what I was doing. So I was hoping that the leaves was going to just grow back in and cover it up like nothing, whatever. So I placed the plant back over at the window and it started showing a little bit of greenery, but by that time, watering was completely off. I don't know if it was because the plant just didn't look that good. I just stopped trying to care for the plant. But within 2 to 3 weeks, I noticed that the plant was almost half the size. And from there, it only got worse. So I had to call my old mom. My old mom had to talk to me. And she was just like, basically, we just going to have to cut all these thin vines off your plant because it's not doing any good. And then we're going to prop them in some water. And some of them, if you want to, you could just push them back in and put a little bit of dirt on top of these and it'll grow out. I didn't know. I didn't know to believe. I just did what she said. I FaceTimed her probably 2 or 3 times over dealing with this plant within that month, just making sure we got everything right, from the cutting to the watering to where I was locating it at. Like, I really wanted to get this plant right because, guys, this was my first plant that I actually felt like I knew what I was doing, and I just didn't want to fail. So after I went through the process of doing that, I realized that I wasn't scared of plants anymore. And I was like, wow, okay, so if I can handle this, what else can I handle? I instantly found out that pothos, philodendrons, and monsteras are really good beginner-friendly plants. And oddly enough, I don't remember at the time seeing that Hoyas were beginner-friendly plants, but they are really good too. So after following all the instructions that my old mom gave me and listening to her when she would call me, just paying attention to some stuff she would just tell me about plants and how to recognize things, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to make this next step. I really am. So I didn't know much about the price inflation when you go to like your local nurseries. And it's not that they're high and they're charging anything, but it's the best of the best. Like, you're not going in there just to get a regular philodendron. You're going there to get the best philodendron that they can get shipped to your state. You know what I mean? Like, that's my mindset. That's the only local nurseries I go to, is the ones that have the best of the best. That's all I'm saying. After going into those stores and not knowing much about plants and knowing what the price of them should be, I just went stupid. I went to the store with a little bit of money and came out with a little bit of plants because, that money didn't go nowhere. But then I went back the next time with some money to buy these plants. After I did that, I then, don't ask me why, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start me an Instagram. And that's what I did. My Instagram, I didn't have a lot of plants. I probably had at the time maybe about 8 or 9 plants. Didn't know how to care for them, and I wasn't teaching anybody how to care for the plants either. All I was doing was posting my plants. I wanted to be able to go back on Instagram one day and look at just where the journey started and have it documented, because you know what, these phones keep on dying and going out, and before, none of my stuff is saved. So every time I lose so many pictures of things, so I figured that Instagram is going to be around for a while, so I throw my plant pictures on there. And guys, I have probably over maybe 5,000 posts. I don't know, it's a lot that I have. I get Instagram. And now, since I have Instagram, now I'm browsing pages, seeing what other people have. And not only seeing what other people have, what other people are going to get. And you know, as with anything, most people are braggy. You know, so of course they only going to say they're going to get the best of the best, even if they don't. Because some of these people that I used to follow, and I still do now, I thought that their plants was something else, but they really wasn't. You know, and I'm not saying that they suckered me into doing anything, but sometimes, you know, these people are paid influencers. You know what I mean? So you thinking that you just watching the plant, but you really watching the soil, you're watching pots, you're watching everything being advertised back there. So your mind now is just going. So you know me, how I do it, I instantly decided I'm going to make my own soil mix. I didn't want the regular plants. You know, I can't believe I'm even saying that. The regular plants. Some of my most favorite plants in here, I didn't want those because they was too easy. I could just go into the store and get those. No, I want something that people used to have to, you got to seek for. You got to order. You got to, you know, you got to know. So with that comes a cost. Everything that's labeled rare, it's going to have a nice little price tag to it too. So then I decided, after buying these plants and being able to take care of these plants for the most part, when I say take care, meaning I did know to bring them home, I did know to give them water, and I did know to give them light. Grow lights hadn't came yet. I'm still figuring things out when it comes to that, but I did know they needed to be by a window, so I was smart about that. I realized that I wanted to make their own soil because everybody would complain that the stuff that you buy your plant in, when you bring home, that soil isn't good. Which, there is some truth to it. Well, that stuff that you buy from the store, usually that your plant is in, unless you're buying it from like your local nursery that has maybe repotted the plants and so forth. A lot of it has just peat moss and perlite, which it has a lot of peat moss and like only a little bit of perlite, and it just doesn't work good in most homes. We go ahead and repot them, and failure was almost sure to happen. Like, you don't need to repot your plant unless it is a like need to have to repot it. Give it a couple of months to let it acclimate, unless you really just have to. That's my recommendation to you. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna make my own soil. Made my soil all wrong, guys. I had too much of this and not enough of that. I had cocoa husk, peat moss. Why did I put peat moss in my... I'm trying to get rid of peat moss. Why did I put peat moss inside of my mix? I don't know, guys, because I saw other people doing it. I had cocoa husk. I had about 7 ingredients in there, long story short. All wrong. Affected every single one of my plants. I had to go through there and do it. Let me tell you what I did. And this was the dumbest thing, but I don't want you to make this mistake. So pay attention. When you open up your soil and you use it and you place it in a dark place or whatever, and you go back to it, check it to make sure it doesn't have any fungus or any like just green fungi. Oh, don't use it if it do. Just get rid of it. I, being cheap, didn't think it was that big of a deal. Took 2 scoops of it, mixed it in, or not 2 scoops, whatever scoops was, all that was there, took it all in, threw it in, made my mix. Almost all of my plants immediately, I say immediately, within like a week, just started showing signs of they're gonna die. So I was like, and I'm still like, well, I haven't done anything, but then a repot on it. I was like, oh my God. I started looking up, I went to Google. I forgot to mention that I didn't water my plants after I repotted them too. It had told me that I had fungus and I probably contaminated all my plants. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I had to repot all of my plants. Now, the second mix that I used was very basic. The same one that I give to you over and over and over again. Except I did not know anything about the size 3 perlite. So I was using regular perlite. But I always say, you get you some orchid mix, some indoor pot mix, and some perlite. You throw those in together and a little bit of horticulture charcoal, which I just recently started using that. That's why I always have to tag it in. But when I make my mix, I do throw that in now. But guys, you use those ingredients, that's gonna pretty much take care of all of your tropical house plants, okay? But I learned about the soil. After I learned about the soil, then I started learning about light. And that is what made the difference. That is when I started really just collecting plants. Because it was one thing to keep the plants alive, but it's another thing for a plant to thrive. Like a plant to stay small for a year if you don't give it the stuff that it needs, but it has just enough to just not to give up, right? But if you give that plant what it really needs, and you set it beside a plant that doesn't, I guaranteed you that plant's gonna be like almost triple the size. Now, if it's a slow grower, maybe double. But what I'm saying is that it is a huge difference. So my plants were doing good. They were surviving. They wasn't thriving until I bought grow lights. And the plants started waking up. Like they just started getting so big. And for some reason, that encouraged me to want to get more plants because they're getting big. So that's when I started getting into moss poles and planks and so forth. Now, I only had one plank, so I just put that on a piece of wood. It was a Monstera dubia, which I lost to Thrips about a year ago. I keep telling myself I'm going to get another one, but the only sizes that I'm seeing are like 4 to 6 inches, like about this big or this big. But that one I had was so big, and I hate having to start from the bottom again on a replacement plant. So I usually like to start with either a little bit further along than where I was at, or at least where I was at. But I don't want to go baby stages again. I don't have room for baby plants right now. So yeah, so I'm now buying all kind of plants that would just produce big leaf plants. Not worried about the cost. At that time, my budget really started reeling back in, and I really started getting practical. I was like, okay, you're spending $70, $80 on these rare plants or on a rare plant, but you don't have the things that you need in order for it to survive. And a lot of the rare plants I still was killing because I didn't know how to care for those. I mastered the general plants, because I'm not going to say basic. When it came to the rare plants, the ones that require just a little bit more care than what I was prepared to give to them, those always seemed to die. So once the light started waking the room up and I started being encouraged to buy again, I started looking at those more complicated plants that I had killed earlier on. Now, I would still say I overspent because I was so determined to grow every one of them again that had died, that I should have slowed down and just bought them in smaller groups. Like bought maybe 2 to 3 plants at max a month. Like really master those out before I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna see if I can get these 4 or get this 5. And that's when Etsy started to come along, because I realized I couldn't afford going to the local nurseries. And at that time, I had pretty much had every plant that I wanted from these stores anyway. Unless it was a specific one that I was going, but none of these stores was using like social media at that time to let me know it was a new plant. So I would actually have to get in my car and go. And I didn't really have a lot of time to do that because I was so wrapped up in my plants. So instead of going out, making that drive, if I had any extra time, I just wanted to be around my plants. So I got it on Etsy, and Etsy has just about every plant you could think of. Now, on the flip side, sometimes the plants aren't authentic and they mislabel the plants. And so you buy one plant thinking it's this and it turn out being that. But also, to be fair, a lot of plants, especially philodendrons, at the very beginning stages, they all look alike. So you can have whatever it is until it starts growing. You're just like, hold on a minute here. This has fuzzy leaves. Like what? So it can happen. But Etsy, I started getting on there and buying those plants just smaller, like the baby ones, and just started stacking up. So for like $200, I can get like 5 or 6 plants with the plants I was buying, because those were going for like $39. They still was philodendrons, which are still very cheap in my opinion when you're looking at like house plants, and as they start going up as far as the exotic, rare, and hard to find, all of those. Okay, so I still didn't see those as being a lot. However, if I would have just bought those 2, I could have, again, just mastered it out. Instead of I bought 6, bought all of them in there, and what do you think happened? I just, boom, I got frustrated with myself. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not buying any more plants. I'm good with what I have. This also was the time that my monsteras, I had just bought my Monstera Thai Constellation. You all seen the video of me doing a repot on that plant. Just bought it. It was a dream plant and it died on me. It got thrips. I had a huge thrips infestation going on in the room that I was unaware of. I didn't know what to look for. I started knowing what mealybugs looked like, but I didn't know what thrips looked like until one of my friends on Instagram, she said, hey, your plant is brown in the back. I don't think that's the sun that's doing that. Your Monstera may have thrips. I'm like, thrips? What? No, like, I don't have no sick plants. No. I mean, I didn't tell that to her, but I was just like, okay, thank you. Y'all, it was thrips. I took a look at it. Couldn't believe it. Took a picture of it, at Google to verify. Yeah, it was thrips. They are very, very, very small, and they just be moving fast on those leaves. They're not white like the mealy bugs. The mealy bugs, like when you touch them, they almost feel like powdered donuts, something like that. Sometimes I just squeeze them and have fun. I know. By the time I done my research to know that they had thrips and to start treating for it, my whole Monstera collection had already been affected by the thrips. Which brings me here. In this plant room, about 50% of the collection are from the start of my collection. Now, the ones that you see in between, the real bigger ones, those most likely are plants that I have bought over the past 2 years. Now when I buy plants, I don't prefer to buy them as babies. I know I mentioned it a time or two. So I usually buy those plants a little bit bigger than just a starter plant. You hear a whole lot about plants being hard to acclimate, which I was talking on before. I don't believe that they are. I believe smaller plants are harder to acclimate than the bigger plants, personally speaking. Now, I would not recommend you jump straight in and start repotting a plant that's already well established. Like if I was to go to the store and buy, this right here is my philodendron Burrow March, by the way. If I was to go to the store and buy a plant this size, I would not go in here and do a full repot. If it needed to be repotted, I would take what this plant have, I would pick it up out the pot, brush it off a little bit to knock a little bit of that soil that's down there. Allow some of those roots, even if you have to break a couple of them, that's okay. Try not to break the real big main ones, but a little bit of the baby ones, that's okay. And try to get it so that those roots will drop down into that new soil that you get ready to put your plant into. And that's about as much as I would take off, because when a plant is just so mature, unless it's showing signs of being sick, I wouldn't want to disrupt what it has going on, okay? So hopefully you was able to learn a little bit about me, learn a little bit about the plant room, and yeah, I can't wait to update you all. Take care.